to the stage to also make his remarks.
Thank you, Mother. The Right Honorable Speaker, the Leader of Minority, represented by the Deputy, Honorable Robert Mbui, our Deputy Speaker, Clerk of the National Assembly, Honorable Members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Honorable Speaker, when Robert was presenting, I asked myself, and I was looking at Honorable Owen Baya, to see if his level of sycophancy would get to that of Robert Mbui, because you heard when Robert Mbui was concluding the remarks, he read from the Right Honorable Junet Mohammed, Leader of Minority. So, and I hope there are lessons you are learning. Happy New Year. I'm indeed happy, Honorable Speaker, to have the privilege and honor to address these honorable members this early in the year as we transition into the 5th session of the 13th Parliament. And as I've been said by the speakers who've spoken ahead of me, this session does represent a very defining phase and a critical phase in the life of our 13th Parliament. And it's a phase where we must all work together to consolidate the work that we have done over the last 3 or so years, or 2.5 to 3 years, and also complete all the pending work that is ahead of us. And I think, as you've heard from the Leader of Minority and the Clerk, there is quite a bit of pending work. And also decisively deliver on our legislative agenda that will be before us as a House. And this retreat indeed offers all of us together that opportunity for the National Assembly to provide leadership in refining our legislative agenda and our program as we strengthen oversight over the executive and other arms of government, and also to ensure that our work does translate into tangible results for the people that we represent, the people who honorably elected us to come and represent them in the National Assembly. Honorable members, therefore, as we take stock of the journey that we have come over the last 3 or so years in the 13th Parliament, we must recognize that the 5th session represents a very decisive phase for us. And this is a moment that will shape how this Parliament will be remembered ultimately. And I therefore urge you to enter this session with focus, immense discipline, and commitment to secure both our individual and collective legacies in the 13th Parliament as we begin at the beginning of next month. Honorable members, as we reflect on the 4th session, I commend you for the diligence that you all put in and fulfilled the National Assembly's mandates of legislation, representation, and oversight, as well as appropriation. And during the session, the House held a total of 116 sittings, and you see from the presentation here the number of bills that we were able to consider, about 49 bills, out of which 23 were concluded, a total of 210 motions, out of which 150 were concluded, petitions 64, and 28. And with that, you see the issues that the Clerk of the National Assembly was speaking to. Probably at the end of this session, we should be asking ourselves whether indeed the Petitions Committee is doing us well, and in terms of processing of petitions that come to us, and or whether we will need to review our standing orders as we come to the end of this 13th Parliament. Questions, again, with the changes to the standing orders and statements, you see there are quite a number, 130, 76 were answered, and must commend chairs of committees and committees that put in a lot of work to consider many of these questions and statements. But you can see we are still lagging behind on statements. A total of 591 statements, and only 191 were concluded. It tells you that we have over 400 statements. Statements requested by yourselves, many of them on behalf of your members, and 400 of them are still pending before committees. Honorable Speaker, you will remember that we have engaged on this in the House Business Committee, that these 400 statements that are still pending, many of them, chairs and vice chairs of committees tell us the answer will be coming in how long? 2 weeks. So 2 weeks has become a customary response for any chair of a committee. But how often do we follow up to make sure that within those 2 weeks, we deliver on those statements? Because if we did, we would not have 400 of them pending. We have considered 82 statutory instruments very well, because 68 of them have been concluded. Sessional papers, only 1 is pending. Treaties and agreements out of 16, 9 have been concluded, 7 pending. And of course, we have had a total of 3,130 papers that have been laid before the House. Honorable Speaker, this record reflects the scale of responsibility borne by the National Assembly and underscores the need for careful planning as we move forward this session. And right, Honorable Speaker, we thank you for the leadership in steering the House through the 4th session and look forward to a very productive 5th session. Honorable members, the upcoming session presents a demanding legislative agenda alongside the implementation of a consequential budget that is designed to deliver on transformative national projects. Our legislative and oversight responsibility will be critical in ensuring that these projects move beyond policy and resource allocation, but are translated into tangible outcomes for our constituents. And as the clerk did indicate, I think on Thursday, the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, the Honorable Atandi, will have a session, as well as the chair of the Finance and National Planning Committee, to take us through this very consequential budget. Noteworthy, it's good to mention that this year's budget may be the very last budget that will be consequential to you and to your constituents in this life of Parliament. Because as the clerk indicated, next year's budget, we will do it in the run-up to the elections, and definitely with campaigns coming in, we will not have good time to follow up, and many of us will be very busy in the constituencies. Therefore, this is the time to engage constructively and meaningfully, including the Honorable Mpuru Aburi and the Honorable Wamudende, who is newly elected, the Honorable Ndakwa. This budget will be the most consequential for your constituents. Therefore, I want to invite you to also make sure that when the Honorable Atandi is presenting, you are present. Honorable Speaker, some priority business for the 5th session includes consideration of the field development plan and product sharing contracts for Block T6 and T7 in South Lokicha, based in Turkana County. We also have the sessional paper number 3 of 2025 on partial divestiture in Safaricom PLC by the government of Kenya. And the Honorable Robert Mbui has alluded to this divestiture and the privatization process that is ongoing, and invited us to make sure that as a House we offer meaningful oversight to make sure that the Kenyan people that we represent get value for their money and get value for the assets that our forefathers established in our country, so that as we divest, we make sure that the people of Kenya gain value for it. As you are aware, these matters were received towards the end of the 4th session and committed to relevant committees to conduct extensive public participation, and thereafter report to the House for consideration upon its resumption. And I must thank members of the Finance and National Planning Committee, members of the Debt and Privatization Committee, who have been working tirelessly throughout this recess period to make sure that they conduct meaningful, quantitative, and quality public participation that I see is going on until the 14th of February. And therefore, we do expect that we'll be tabling a report. And I want to invite you, honorable members, to interact with the report ahead of debate once it is tabled, and also take your time to invite your constituents and yourselves to attend the public participation exercises, because I want to believe that we all are elected by our constituents because they believed that that we know better and we ought to know better, and therefore should be at the forefront in guiding them, so that we stem the culture that has permeated in our society and in our country today of misinformation and disinformation. The time to do it is now, and we must be at the forefront to lead from the front to make sure that we engage in a meaningful way with the committee as they do the public participation exercise that I said will go on until the 14th of February. Among the notable bills, honorable members, that the House considered in the previous session and subsequently enacted into law include the Government-Owned Enterprises Bill of 2025 and the Repeal Privatization Act of 2025. As indicated in the program again, this retreat provides us an opportunity to deliberate on utilization of the proceeds arising from the divestiture and to review the status of implementation of these statutes with a keen focus on the National Assembly's legislative and oversight roles. Now, allow me, Honorable Speaker, just to expound a little bit on the GOE Act and the Privatization Act that we enacted and passed into law. Because, Honorable Speaker, as I said, we must always be at the forefront in leading our people. And when we divest from government enterprises through privatization, the Honorable Mbui has challenged us in his remarks that we, as a House, we must be there to offer meaningful oversight, ensure that whatever monies come from the privatization process are utilized in a manner that creates impact for our people. And we have listened to those in the executive, and we have heard them commit that none of the money that will be raised out of the privatization process will go, one, into repaying debt, or public debt, two, to settling recurrent expenditure in our country. And it has been said it will not go to pay salaries. And payment of salaries is important. Repayment of our debt is important. But as those in the executive have committed, the people to make sure that that is not done is us in the legislature by offering meaningful oversight. Therefore, those in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, I know you'll be invited and you'll be inviting us to consider appropriating part of the resources, or rather wholly the resources that will come into the consolidated fund out of the divestiture process. We must ensure that these monies get to where the monies were destined to go to, and will not go into settling any recurrent expenditure or even settling part of our public debt. And that's why I joined my colleague and brother, Honorable Robert Bui, and also inviting you together collectively, because I know Honorable Mbui spoke as a leader of minority. But as a House, we have a collective duty and responsibility in line with our Constitution to oversight the executive. And I want to invite all of us to offer that meaningful oversight together. Honorable Speaker, notably 22 bills that were not concluded during the fourth session were exempted from the provisions of Standing Order 141-2 of the National Assembly Standing Orders on lapsing of bills, and therefore those 22 bills did not lapse at the end of the last session and will be further considered in the fifth session. This include, among others, the petitions to Parliament Procedure Amendment Bill of 2022, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill of 2024, and the Pensions Amendment Bill of 2024. I believe this is the Makali Mulu Pensions Amendment Bill, and other priority legislative proposals on governance, economic management, and social policy. I therefore want to urge honorable members to approach this outstanding business with renewed commitment so that the House may conclude its work efficiently and responsibly to advance the interests of the Kenyan people. And I want to believe that those of us who sit in the House Business Committee, we will indeed work to prioritize part of this pending business so that it's quickly considered at the beginning of this session. In scheduling business for the fifth session, I implore you to leverage this opportunity to also identify priority areas of high impact to the citizenry and advance appropriate legislation and interventions through motions and other house instruments. Some areas of interest are included in this retreats program and pave way for focused deliberations on key national and governance issues, including the regulation and financing of political parties. And we had John Cox is here from the ORPP. Election preparedness, the state of the economy, implementation of the competency-based education curriculum, and I'm happy to note that in the program, the CS National Treasury, CS Education, will be joining us tomorrow or the day after. The status of healthcare service delivery, CS Aden Duale and his team will be here. And the way forward with respect to the National Government Constituencies Development Fund, NGCDF, which I want to believe you all have a deep interest in. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, allow me to borrow from the words in the Holy Book, Psalms 133, that says, "Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." And allow me to reiterate the power of collective intelligence, that when diverse voices are heard, independent judgment is respected and decisions are anchored in the common good. Institutions inevitably make wiser and more enduring choices. The strength of this house does not rest in any one member or any one individual, but in our collective resolve to deliberate with honesty, decide with prudence, and always act in the best interests of the people that we represent, the people of Kenya. Honorable members, this retreat therefore presents a timely platform for reflection, candid engagement, and consensus building on critical matters of concern to the Kenyan people. Let us approach this task with purpose and a shared commitment to the mandate entrusted to us by the people. And I wish you all very fruitful deliberations, and thank you for lending me your ears. And with that, Honorable Speaker, it will now be my singular honor and pleasure to now invite the very right honorable, since Honorable Junet was right honorable, the very right honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Senior Counsel, and our leader in the National Assembly, the Honorable Speaker Moses Masika Wetangula. Karibu uongee na jeshi lako.
Asante sana. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Ichung'wa. Happy New Year, honorable members. Karibu sana Naivasha, Nakuru County, the county where women rule. The only county with a woman governor, a woman senator, and 4 elected women members of parliament. Is there another county with that? It is also a county where I first worked in my employment. As a magistrate, I was posted to Nakuru in October 1982. And I worked very well with the leadership here. Honorable members, welcome to this retreat, a retreat that brings us together at a time when this parliament is on home stretch. Before I say anything, allow me to acknowledge part of our leadership. We have members of the Parliamentary Service Commission,